Good morning to all of you. Thank you, Bala, for this opportunity. It's always very refreshing to have an audience other than orthopedic surgeons and spine surgeons, because over the last 3 decades, we have almost developed a speaker-listener fatigue, because they have seen my face on the podium so many times. And it is really wonderful to have an anesthetic audience. Now, I chose this topic because it's becoming increasingly relevant on where we mean and where we stand in relevance to the world. Before I go into it, a disclosure that amongst this audience, I know there are many people who are already standing very tall in the profession and who have made our country very proud. And so this talk is not meant for them. I mean, there are many things that I have to learn from them. This talk is meant for the younger colleagues on what I think that we need to achieve in the next few decades, so that because you are the future of our country. Now, it's 67 years since we have got our republic, and now India is a focus of attention to the whole world. We are talked about, we are written about, we are discussed about throughout the world on various frontiers. We also have a Prime Minister who has made us proud. He is most of the time out of our country and has made our presence very much felt internationally, has given us a lot of slogans, Swachh Bharat, and one of the ones which he has given recently to make a lot of impact is Make in India. Now, this means that you have to become self-sufficient and also do something that you become more relevant. Whatever you do is not only for you, but for the whole country, world. And that is why I thought I will take that as a cue from our Prime Minister and talk about medical innovations and advances that should be made in India. Now, when you say made in India and use the term India, this name means a lot of different things to a lot of people. It means culture, it means tradition, it means antiquity, it means history, but also it means advance, it means high population, it means strength of purchasing power, it means industrial power, it means a lot. And a lot of you may say, what is in a name? A rose called by any name smells as sweet. That was by Shakespeare. We can say a peacock, while called by any name, looks as nice. But that is in literature. But in real life, a name means everything. Now, if you look at the name Rolex, the word Rolex means a lot. It symbolizes quality, it symbolizes a value, it symbolizes a brand. That means everything. And many of these words, Microsoft, IBM, Infosys, Apple, Tata, Intel, they all mean more than what they actually represent as a word. They represent quality, consistency, symbol of reliability, and have got a brand which has been cultivated with a lot of effort, difficulty, and trustworthiness. It takes a long time, many decades to do this. And I think brands can go beyond institutions, corporations, and business houses also. And actually, every country also has a brand. Now, if you look at watches, just saying that it is Swiss made, it makes a huge difference to a watch. If you take technology, if you take instrumentation, for example, surgical instrumentation, if you say it's made in Germany, then it means a lot. It means much different. And now then we have to take in connotation what the world takes when we use the terminology made in India. Now, for this, when we talk of the Indian scenario, it represents a lot. A lot of us are very happy to talk of our glorious past. Even this morning, My first message in the WhatsApp message was a few congratulations for the helicopter project, but in between there was another WhatsApp message saying zero and algebra was actually found in India, and they said if you are a proud Indian, please forward it to all your friends. So we still hang on to a lot of our glorious past. This is something very important for us. But over the period in 1980s, we started getting recognized for our academic and scientific strength. Now, we also were called as the intelligence bank because a lot of the big corporates were starting to be powered and also be headed by Indians. And if you look at a snapshot of Indians at the helm of leading global business, your heart actually jumps with joy. There is a wow feeling in your heart. If you look at what is the prediction for the economy of India and how we are going to supersede most of the other powers, again there is a upbeat in your heart and there is a feeling of wow. Now, then you come to the other side of the coin. If you look at what is the scientific impact that we as medical people have made over the last few decades, then it's not as good as it should have been. Now, I'm sure anesthesiologists and the department of anesthesia is much better probably than orthopedic surgery. But I can talk for orthopedic surgery and say that the impact that we have made around the world is not very huge. If you look at the top rated journals, you will see that the Indian contribution is very, very low. And if you look at that, then this wow stops there. It just becomes pink in a little bit of shame and blush, and then it disappears all around. Now, if you look at the published research from India, again, you can see there are so many countries over here. And all of them here, and India, unfortunately, has not made a huge impact. But this is a paradox if you actually look into it. It should actually be the other way around, because the medical pyramid of India actually shows that any of us or the medical community is actually at the pinnacle of our society. If you look at people who are passing through primary education, people who take the school-going exams, people who join medical school and then who become specialists. And then when you are a super specialist, you are literally at the helm of a pyramid where it means that you are one of the best. We are one of the best in the society, isn't it? At least in my generation. Only if you didn't get medicine, people joined engineering. And then now we find that the engineers are dominating around the world, so it should be the other way around. India also has lots of unique opportunities. Now we have 1/6 of the world population and 1/5 of the world disease burden. In fact, we are called the disease capital of the world. I mean, we have so much of disease, there is so much of experience, so much of knowledge of treating people firsthand that we should be telling the world what exactly we must be doing. We also have the highest number of skilled people as a result of technical universities in bioengineering, bioinformatics, biotechnology. Then actually, if you look at many of the foreign universities, almost the research is powered by Indians in that team. And the cost of research is also very low in India. It is 1/5 to 1/10 of that of the West. And for the same cost, actually we must be doing 10 times more research. So why then is this problem? I mean, why is that with all these advantages, with all these opportunities, with everything, we are still not able to create a major scientific impact of what we should be doing? As a result of this, the most unfortunate thing is that there is no Indian school of thought. Now, at least in orthopedics, if you take many of the spinal deformities and other, we say that this is the French school of thought. This is the Latin American school of thought. This is the North American school of thought. This is what the Germans did. But there are only very few niche segments in spine surgery where we can say that there is an Indian school of thought and Indian original contribution. But is there a need? Should we worry about it, or should we get worried about that? I think there is a big need for this, because medicine cannot be globalized. And that's my humble opinion. There is a lot of work, a lot of talk about globalization of medicine. But I think medicine cannot be globalized. Because let's look at these two people. Even though the problem may be the same for both of them, the solution cannot be the same. Because their background is different, their affordability is different, their expectations are different, their care provider is different, and when they get the treatment and go back, the social circumstances to which they go back is also completely different. So, even for the same problem, the solution cannot be the same. And if we try to give a solution which is apt to a different population, to our country, maybe then we are not doing the same. Secondly, there is also a growing feeling, and there is a lot of evidence for this, that all that it is printed is not sacred anymore. Now, previously we used to think that everything that is printed is written in letters of gold. Lots of questionable research practices and research misconduct and frauds are coming into light. And it becomes more important that we need to look at what is apt for us and to also verify whether the published works are really true. I will just take two examples, one from field of orthopedics and one from the field of anesthesia, to push home this point. Now, one of the significant things that impacted the practice of spinal cord injuries is the administration of high dose of methylprednisolone, which was called the NASCI 3 trial regime. Now, this took the world as a storm, and giving high-dose methylprednisolone became the norm in the treatment of spinal cord injuries. Now, this resulted in the use of solumedrol. The sale of solumedrol went into billions, and it stood as one landmark drug which shot up Pfizer's stock market value almost 3 times. Now, if you look at the story of this, you will find that the authors of this trial actually went to New York Times first and published it in the newspaper even before they published it in the spinal cord journal. And the researchers then went a little step further, and they took the unusual step of announcing the results before they were published, and they also sent 19,000 fax messages to all the emergency departments around the country urging the use of solumedrol. And the principal investigator, Dr. Bracken, also reinforced the fear of medical legal issues if you don't solumedrol by testifying against physicians who did not use it. So, multi-billion-dollar sales were over, but then you found that all the trials that came later not only proved that solumedrol was not useful, it was also proved that there was a deleterious effect and there was an increased mortality and huge morbidity by giving the solumedrol. And they went into the primary study and then found that almost all the statistics that were used in this paper were not the appropriate statistical methods that should have been used. But anyway, the problem of this is industry funded. We'll find that for all the clinical trials, for all the major published work, approximately 61% of the trials are industry funded, and that can add a huge bias into this. This is a person on your side. He is an anesthetist, Scott Rubin. Many of you might have known about him because he is all over the place in the internet for what he did. Now, he produced papers that were very well published and even in high impact journals, and they were very widely cited. However, there was only one problem with this study, was that no patients were ever enrolled in any of his study. All of this was great imagination. All the papers were written on his office, and he managed to get them all. And based on his paper, the sales of Celebrex, Bextra, and Vioxx, the COX-2 inhibitors, and the use of them in the post-operative period around the world quadrupled, and that was another $1 billion profit for the industry. And later it came to know that for all the papers that he wrote, he was paid $420,000 and much more to the trust that he manages. So the color of research seems often to be the shade of green, and what is unfortunate is that a published paper is not sacred anymore. In the JAMA, it has been shown very clearly, 80% of non-RCT studies, 25% of what we consider as gold standard RCT studies, and 10% of platinum RCT studies, they all have been found that of the 49 of the most highly regarded research findings in the past 13 years, and this goes across specialties, cardiology, diabetology, orthopedics, everything, 41% were found to be totally wrong or significantly exaggerated. So it becomes very important for us. And I was very happy to find my previous speaker, Dr. Puri, was actually quoting a lot of his own findings rather than quoting it from the journal. And this should actually become the norm. My congratulations to him. There is a lot of scientific blood, and we are blindly following the tune of outside evidence. So it's very important that we take a U-turn and make sure that whatever we discuss and whatever we do, the medical knowledge must be made in India. But what is preventing us from doing it? What is preventing us from dominating the whole world? I think there are a few points which I would like to discuss. One is we have to start looking forward. We really need to give up the past and look at the front. In one of the very important talks by Mr. Narayana Murthy, Infosys, he was discussing 5 reasons why Indian businesses lag in innovation. And we can't be leaders if we don't innovate. If we don't give original ideas. And he said there are many of us who talk highly of our scientifically evolved and innovative sages of olden times. And many more who take pride in our inherent ability to do frugal, grassroots innovations like Jugaad. So in Hike, in your WhatsApp, these kinds of pictures always come, where water bottles have been converted into chapels and scooters are supplementing motors. They're all Jugaad, then it is fine. But while the world has moved on to significant and disruptive innovations, our appetite has been very much satiated by stories of how we found zero, Pushpak Vimana, and the random low-lying Jugaads that come on the WhatsApp. So this has made freeze in creativity over a period of time. So I think we have to stop looking back and look forward and have a plan on the areas where there is knowledge gap, where we can supplement knowledge, the type of clinical diseases where we have the strength, and we have to plan so that we can actually contribute a lot. Second is create the right environment in our workplace so that we can have innovations. And here, every one of us have a role here. If you are the professor, if you are the chairman of the department, if you are the head of the department, if you are a senior registrar, even if you are a postgraduate, I think all of us have a role to create an environment which will promote academics and research. This becomes important because there is a study. They have looked at orthopedic surgeons, all who have done very well and then stayed back in India, and then some of them who have gone to UK. And unfortunately, at the end of the period, they find that Indians abroad produce papers and have published 10 times more. So that brings to the big question of brain drain. So in the 1980s, when there was a big discussion on brain drain, and Nani Palkiwala was asked his opinion, he said, I am totally against any restrictions of Indians to go out, because when they go out, they contribute to the world. Why should we keep them here? Because when they stay back, it becomes brains in the drain and not brain drain. So we really need to, this talk again became a big discussion when Sundar Pichai became the Google chief, and lots of people discussed whether it is a brain drain that he was let to go, and many of them felt that being back here he would not have achieved what's more. So there is nothing like an academic gene. People have looked at our gene. I don't know whether anybody found extra gene in people who have done very well academically. There is nothing like an academic gene. I think it is a state of mind. It is an attitude, and it flourishes in an academic environment. So it's very important that every person in every organization at whatever level they are, and a little more responsibility on the people at the top than at the bottom, that the environment is made very good for an academics. You also need to be sure that our education is very good. Now you have to look, this was seen earlier, that our productivity in research is very low. But here you can see that this is because of the poor education over here. At the education level, we are not contributing and promoting. Fourth is, I think we should work more and talk less. There's a lot of discussion on what we are going to do. This is my plan. I am going to do this. I should be doing this. But at the end of the year, nothing much comes. And we take pleasure in lots of phrases like, India is a sleeping giant. It is a sleeping tiger. And the only problem is, when you're always sleeping, it does not matter whether you're a tiger or a cat. I mean, it only depends upon when you're waking up and what you're going to do after you wake up. And you have to aim high. And how high you aim is the difference between whether you're a tiger or a cat. Now, I always, this is one of my most favorite, this thing, I put it to my registers all the time. This is a significant 10 seconds that rocked the world. At which time Usain Bolt actually had such a huge lead when their photo finish was not necessary, that allowed him even to slow down in the last 1 second. And if you look at him and asked him what makes it special, and this is what he does every time before he goes for a run. He looks up and then he points to the sky, saying that every single run for him is important and he aims for the sky. And that is the problem for us, because we don't aim for the sky. The Indian problem, as Kondaria clearly said, the issue is not what India is doing, but what it is capable of doing, and here comes a huge gap. And this was very much obvious in the previous Olympics. We all went crazy. We all went tipsy-turvy with joy because we got 6 medals. But actually, we have to actually look at what China did and US did. And if you compare, then we know that where we should have been, and then there becomes a huge gap. So we all have this problem of celebrating success too early and contentment. And here it's very important that all of us have the opportunity to move shoulder to shoulder with giants in the field, so that we really know that a lot more can be achieved. Now, if your aim is to present this in an international conference, but you congratulate yourself when you are presented in your local society, then, when you celebrate that, you feel so nice about it that you miss even the goal of presenting in the state conference. Lastly, we should avoid the blame game, the one game where no one wins. You ask anybody why they have not published a paper, it is very ingenious on how many different reasons you can get why the work has not been done. But we have to remember, as Mahatma Gandhi said, if you point your finger at somebody else, please remember that 3 fingers are pointing back at you. And you cannot be too busy to do the right thing. And time is something that we always point out, but I think time is how we use it. It is the only thing that the beggar on the street has as much as the President of the United States. Nobody can claim more time. And it is only how we use it that it matters. The only way we can effectively use it is that, there is a lot of talk on vitamin D deficiency. I think Indians, we also have vitamin P deficiency. I mean, we lack a little bit of purpose and passion. And we have to love what we do and not for others. And take a good example of everybody who has succeeded, and then we will do. We cannot change or achieve something different by remaining the same. And so you can't achieve much by becoming a bigger and bigger caterpillar. At some point of time, we have to change into a butterfly. So we really need to look, and all the youngsters, at every time, you must have a set pattern, an aim. You have to have a plan for 2017, 2018, 2019. And you need to know these plans well in advance. So whatever you are doing in 2017 is taking you in the direction of what you want to achieve in 2020. What we need to do is that every clinician, every doctor must not only be a good doctor, but if you have to rule the world, you have to turn into a doctor scientist. And for this, we have ample opportunity for clinical research, and it should all start with every department having a good clinical audit. This is the best way that most departments have gone. The best area of research that you should do is not something what is being researched abroad, but actually what is causing a problem for you in your own department. And at every end of the clinical audit, you will get a focus. You will get the idea for the right question that you have to ask so that you can find the right answers for this. So, Bala has invited me over here, so I would like to throw a challenge back to him and to all of you that in 5 years' time, in the Ganga anesthetic course, every single presentation should have majority of reference to research and data from our country and not what is published outside. I think this is something that all of us have to take to. I mean, this is a challenge which we have taken and we are struggling with it. This is a challenge which every department, every medical person should take. And I'll close with the words of Bill Gates. Indians are one of the smartest people in the world. Carefully planned, the future can belong to India. He told this in end of 1980s, when there was a big controversy, a doubt in everybody's mind whether China is going to lead India or India is going to lead China. This answer is for the question when they asked him, which of the Asian countries is going to lead? And he said, my brain tells China, but my heart tells it's going to be India. But he said there is a catch, because they have to be really smartest people, but I'm not sure whether they are going to carefully plan the future as. So in many of the fields, in industries, in businesses, India has really caught up very well. We cannot let it pass in the field of medicine. And I think this is something that all of us have to do for our country. This is something that we need to do so that the next generation and the next generation and the next generation will be very proud that we are living in a country which dominated the intelligentsia not in the previous centuries but also in the future to come. And that can be possible only if we stand tall on our own legs. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.